Hello, this is Errol at Home and welcome to my channel.
Beekeeping is physically demanding. With chronic fatigue syndrome, I struggle to stand for long enough to do a full hive inspection, and lifting boxes that weigh 20 to 30 kilos is not feasible most days. What I need is a system where there is no heavy lifting and where I can sit to check my hives. A kind of hive cupboard. So I started looking into different hive designs and I came across the Slovenian A-Z hive system. Slovenian beekeepers have life sorted. They have bee houses where they keep their bees in the external wall of the house, and they check the hives from behind, out of the weather, sitting down with electricity, so they have light and they can make cups of tea. You can get AZ hives online, but the cost of getting them to New Zealand was prohibitive, so what I have is Langstroth components, and that's where I started. I'm not an expert beekeeper and I am not an expert woodworker at all. With low energy, poorly maintained hand tools and negligible skills, it took me almost 2 months to build this experimental hive. With average health, you could probably do it in an afternoon. And here's how I did it.
For each box I used a kit set story, screws, rods, entry discs, spacers, nails, hinges and hasp. In a Langstroth hive, the frames are suspended by the extensions on the top bar resting on a rebate at the top of the end boards, but since one of the end boards will be on hinges, the frames will be supported underneath by 3 rods running from one side to the other. It's 6.3mm galvanized steel, cut to length and held in holes drilled in the sides. In a Langstroth hive, there is usually one entrance at the bottom of the first story. Sometimes there is an extra entry cut into the top of the queen excluder to allow workers to fly straight into the honey supers, and ventilation is provided by a cut in the crown board rim. I decided to put extra entries on all of the boxes that could be either closed, open or for ventilation. Doing this by hand was a long job. In a Langstroth hive, the frames are 33mm wide at the top, and a box fits 10 frames with a few millimeters between each of the frames, judged by eye. In the AZ hive, metal frame spacers are used at the top and bottom of the end boards. The spacers were just a little too long for the box, so I cut off 3mm from each end and nailed them on 35mm from the top and bottom of the end boards. The kit set boxes are pre-dipped in microcrystalline paraffin wax and don't need painting. I used a corner vise to hold it together and 40mm stainless steel square drive screws to hold the front and 2 sides together. I put 75mm galvanized strap hinges, 55mm from top and bottom on the left hand side, and held it closed with a 65mm zinc plated hasp. Since the boxes were only screwed together at one end, I thought the hive would need greater rigidity, so I used 6mm diameter, 30mm long dowels between each layer, and I used the crown board as a jig. The single and double frame syrup feeders I have won't fit into this hive, so I made a hole in another crown board to fit an inverted jar with a perforated lid. This will be filled with sugar syrup and will be kept in a feeder box, so I won't have to open the hive or wear my suit when I feed them. The rigidity of the hive will be provided by the base and by the crown board, with the boxes sandwiched between and held by the dowels. It gives me the flexibility of being able to move the boxes around if I need to, but gives enough strength that I can open the doors without the hive wobbling around. This is an adaptation because it's a hybrid hive, but if you're building the hive from scratch, you could use solid planks of timber running vertically for the sides, and then you wouldn't need the dowels. I needed to modify the frames to fit, removing the ends of the top bars and making the side pieces narrower to fit the spaces. The top of the frames is 33mm and the bottom is 26mm. The lower part fits, but the top needed to be sawn down. Another beekeeper in the bee club has a router and created grooves in the bottom bars. It may not be essential, but the smaller the contact point with the supporting rods, the less propolis the bees are likely to build on it. Making frames is much faster and easier if you have a jig of some sort, but I haven't made one yet. I use a hairdryer to soften the foundation enough to press it onto the wires, almost like stitching, but it's faster if you use a battery charger to heat the wires.